Hi, good morning. Hi, Des. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Hi, Debbie Prana. Hi, sweetie.
Hi, Sarah.
Nice
Nice
to
to
see
see
you.
you.
Sarah, your hair's so short.
We got
Looks
got it.
good.
Looks like the barber hit. Hi, Marie. All right, are we ready to start?
Yes.
Om Sarva Mangala Mangaye Shive Savarta Sadike Sharanye Trambake Gauri Narayana Namostute Jaya Narayana Namostute Jaya Narayana Namostute Jaya Narayana Namostute. O you who are the giver of all blessings, O you who are the doer of all good, O you who are the fulfiller of all desires, O you who are the giver of refuge, our salutations to you, our salutations to you, our salutations to you. Good morning, everybody. You know, for a really long time, I have avoided speaking on Holy Mother or writing about Holy Mother because it seemed to be an impossibly difficult task. First of all, it's extremely personal, and you don't really want to go there. And something is something that's so deep and sacred and so personal, so you just like talk about something else. And the other thing is like, unlike Ramakrishna or Swami Vivekananda, her life was so quiet. I mean, Swami Vivekananda was like bold and charismatic and brilliant, and 9 volumes of complete works, and he's so inspiring, and thunderbolts coming everywhere. And Ramakrishna was like the king of mystics, the king of all spiritual experiences. You name it, experience, he has had it. And then we've got all of the gospel, we've got the great master, plus all the reminiscences of the direct disciples, his women disciples. And then we have Holy Mother, who was so quiet and modest and shy. She was like quietness itself. She was like the rustle of silk. It was like not even a murmur, just so quiet. So it's like, it seems tough. And she lived a really undramatic life, unlike Ramakrishna or Swami Vivekananda. And that's really why it's a perfect opportunity, a perfect thing to talk about her, because her life was so undramatic. She lived a very ordinary sort of life. And in living, like doing daily chores, cooking and cleaning and taking care of family, which is perfect, absolutely perfect. Because she did her ordinary daily life chores, the cooking, the cleaning, the caring for family members, caring for everybody, husking paddy. She did it without fail. And that just teaches us it's like spiritual life is for everybody. She lived in the highest spiritual realm with being having a totally ordinary daily life, doing what everybody does every single day. No fuss, no muss. She had to deal with family members who were really completely crazy. Her sister-in-law was schizophrenic. She ended up taking care of her daughter, who was Holy Mother's niece Radu, who was also extremely emotionally disturbed. She was an emotional basket case, obviously low intelligence. It took care of her pretty much her whole life, and the sister-in-law was completely stark raving mad, and everyone else in the family was extremely greedy. They were quarrelsome. They had to be set. They were arguing all the time. They were bickering. They were coming to Holy Mother constantly for money. He did this, she did this, da da da. And their quarrels were continual. And she just was like a swan on the water, just completely unruffled by the whole thing, settling their quarrels, dealing with all their issues, never lost her tranquility, never lost her peace. She lived in real poverty for a very long time. After Sri Ramakrishna passed away, he had, of course, made sure that she had money that would support her the rest of her life. And he made sure that she would have all the necessities. And the monks, his disciples, went off to lead, to be wandering monks. So they assumed that she was well taken care of. In fact, Sri Ramakrishna's nephew Ramalal made sure that her stipend was kind of discontinued. So she lived in absolute poverty. She didn't have salt for her rice. She would just pick a few grains that she would farm herself, and that would be her food. She had just one or two saris that were torn and tattered, and finally, one of her women disciples got in touch with one of the disciples in, I think it was Swami Ramakrishnananda in Kolkata, and said, "This is what's happening to Holy Mother." And they had no idea. They were shocked, and then they immediately went into action, and things were immediately rectified. But she went through all these experiences. She never became ruffled. It was like, okay, be content. She suffered from disease. She had constant malaria. She had a lot of tropical diseases. In fact, it was Kala Azar that eventually took her life. She suffered from bereavement. The death, of course, Sri Ramakrishna himself, but then also of his disciples who were her children, and then her own family members. And she remained unruffled, completely at peace. In Dakshineshwar, where she lived with Sri Ramakrishna, she lived in the Nahabat. Now, if you haven't seen the Nahabat, when you go to India, don't miss it. And if you're not going to go, imagine it. It's a round place. It's under 8 feet. It's about 7.5 feet around in each direction. The roof is under 9 feet. To get into there, the doorway is under 2.5 feet. So you've got to bend in half and then come up. Holy Mother said she knocked her head so many times. She said, now the head bends by itself. And in that place, she did imagine. It's like, think of under 8 feet, a circle under 8 feet, and you're living in there. You're cooking all the time in there. You're meditating in there. All the storage for all the food, because you're cooking for all of for Sri Ramakrishna and his disciples and the devotees who come. That's above your head, because you would have storage like bags, like jute bags that she would, including things like live fish, which would be in jars above her head that she would use. And she would have women come and stay with her, and they would stay for days, for a week maybe, in that little tiny place. And there was kind of these bamboo window curtains that she would look out, and she would see Sri Ramakrishna, and she would hear the conversations and see him singing and dancing. And she said that these days were the happiest of her life, where her heart was like a pitcher overflowing with bliss. Now, we complain about our living situation sometimes. It's like, Holy Mother, and her heart was overflowing with bliss in what many people today would say completely untenable situation. And she was the happiest woman in the world. She lived a life intensely in the world, but she was not worldly at all. She remained absorbed in God the whole time, because, as she often said, it's all in the mind. It's all in our attitude that determines whether we live in the world or we live in God in the world, but not affected by the world. It's all in the mind, and that was really Mother's special gift to the world, to show us by example how to live in the world and be completely absorbed in God and be very practical the whole time. Because we often think, if I were a monk or a nun, then I could have a spiritual life. Or if I could just get away to a retreat, or if I could go to the Himalayas or meet the Dalai Lama or some completely illumined soul who could zap us, and then we'd have a spiritual life. Then I could have a spiritual life. Or if I wasn't so busy, or if I didn't have such family stress, or if I wasn't dealing with this pandemic, or if my job wasn't so intense, then I could really double down on my spiritual life. And then I could have a spiritual life. But until my life gets quiet and things settle down, I can't really do that. And Holy Mother showed, you sure can. You sure can. Because her whole life was intense activity all the time. Because we take our mind wherever we go. It isn't like we take a different mind when we go off on pilgrimage. It's the same mind going in and going out. So it's the mind that we have to deal with. She showed us that the highest realization comes from doing everyday activities, day in and day out. because it's all in the attitude and the mind that we bring to whatever thing we do. Whatever we do, we're taking that mind to it. Once in Jaramati, there was a young monk there, and he was sweeping, and then after he was finished, he just took the broom and threw it in a corner. And she said, "How is that, my son? The work is finished, and you just throw it away carelessly?" She said, "It takes as much time to put it away carefully as it does to just throw it in such a careless way." She said, "Should you despise a thing because it's insignificant?" She said, "Won't you need it again?" She said, "Beside this thing too is part of our household. It's a member of our household. It deserves consideration just because of that. And it deserves, everything has a place of honor and respect." She said, "Even a broom should be shown some honor." She said, "The smallest work must be done with reverence." It's like, whoa. Because we often think, oh, that's a trifle, I can do it like that. But every work, she showed us, should be done with reverence. So if we had that, we wouldn't be thinking, oh, I've got big jobs and little jobs. I've got important things and stupid things. Everything deserves reverence, she said. And people often think that if they didn't have to work so much, then they could have a spiritual life. Then they could have meditation and they could study because they're just too much work. But Mother really emphasized the necessity and the value of work. She said, one must do some work. She said, through work alone, we remove the bondage of work. In other words, through karma, we remove the bondage of karma. She said, one shouldn't be without work even for a moment. So when she says that, she's not getting all German. German's like, werk. I know, I have a German mother, right? Werk, you have to work. She said, it's a worst sin is to be lazy. It's like, she never had an accent, but the worst sin is to be lazy. It's like, and she's not being American, where it's like, no, I'm too busy. I'm busy. We have kind of this mania to show that we're busy even when we're not, because we're just in a habit of not being quiet and not thinking. We're afraid of having the quiet. But she said, do this constructive, respectful work at all times. Don't just sit idle. It's not good to sit idle. She said, you can't meditate all the time. It's not possible. So work as an offering to divine, the perfect karma yogi. And to do each and every work we do with love and concentration. Because whether it's a daily chore or a really important, significant task, like, making the new COVID vaccine, it's all has to be done with equal attention, no matter what we do. And she put that attention on everything she did. But her life was really her message of how to live in the world, how to have a spiritual life while living in the world. Once a woman came to see Holy Mother. She came from Kolkata to Jaramati because she wanted to have some spiritual instruction from her. But Mother was busy. She was cooking, she was serving everybody, and then she was cleaning all the cooking utensils, and she was caring for family members, and new devotees kept coming in. So she was being busy the whole time. And this woman's just sitting there, and she's saying, "Mother, I came to get some spiritual instruction from you, but it seems you're too busy even to speak to me." And Mother said to her, "Have I not been giving you spiritual instruction?" It's like, oh, like, oh, okay. We tend to sentimentalize Holy Mother. We tend to just think, oh, Mother is so loving and she's so compassionate, and we can just be ourselves with her, and she accepts all, and that's true, 100%, 1,000% completely true. But if we just leave it at that, then we miss all the other important things that she has to teach us, which are equally important. Now, for one thing, we forget how incredibly strong Holy Mother was. She had enormous inner strength. And one of her more famous teachings is, she said, there's no treasure equal to contentment and no virtue equal to fortitude. Now, we often don't think of Holy Mother and fortitude in the same sentence. And fortitude doesn't mean like going out and busting down doors. It means to be able to withstand the storm, to be able to keep our balance, The storm that either comes from the outside or welling up from the inside, that ability to withstand that storm, that's what fortitude is. To have our own inner strength and our own balance that keeps us stable, strong, and not knocked off our feet by something. In other words, being able to hold our own, being able to keep our own equanimity. You know, like they got those dolls, you knock them over, comes up, knock them over and keeps up. That's the way we have to be. And we can't do that without this kind of tremendous inner ballast. You know, on boats, they throw ballast in to keep it weighted down so when a wave hits, you're not knocked around. We need that ballast too in our lives, and that ballast comes from the presence of the divine. Holy Mother could never be knocked off her balance because she had that inner balance of the presence of God with her at all times, which is what we have to develop. And she shows to us that this is what we need to keep our equanimity, so that we need that inner fortitude. And this fortitude comes from this grounding in divinity, from the strength that comes from the inside, from the Atman within, not from the outside, not just like, I'm stronger than you, I'm going to knock you over. That's just weakness. Mother could always keep her equanimity because she always remained grounded in this divinity, and that was her ballast. And with grace and with practice, we can have the same thing, where we're not knocked off our balance, where external or internal things don't put us down. The wave doesn't hit us and we drown in it. And along with fortitude, she said, there's no treasure greater than contentment. And it sounded sort of lines, just be happy with what you have, stay in your own place. And that's not what that means. It doesn't mean like we shouldn't strive to move forward. Yes, we should. It doesn't mean don't get out of line. It doesn't mean that either. It means striving what we think is the best and the highest for ourselves and for society and for the world. But it means that we do what we can, we do the best we can, and then after that, we leave it in the hands of God. We leave it in the hands of the divine. We've done what we think is best for us, best for society, the best for the world at large. Leave it at that. Shri Krishna often talks about the mother cat who picks up the kitten and throws it in the ashes, or she puts it behind a stove, and the kitten doesn't go, I don't know about where you're moving me. I don't think that's very safe. It's like the kitten just knows. It's okay. Mother is placing me there. That's what contentment is. It's like, okay. So that whatever we have, whatever we end up with, it's like, okay, we can live in gratitude with that because we've tried our best. We live in the knowing we've tried our best. We've done what we can. This is what we have. Okay, I'm content. I'm not clawing and scraping, trying to get more, trying to step on the head of somebody else. I'm content with that. That's why Mother said there's no treasure greater than contentment, because it gives tremendous peace. Not always like, I have to have more, I have to have different, I have to have something else. No, that's just weakness. Part of fortitude is forbearance, and Mother repeatedly talked about the importance of forbearance. Sri Krishna used to say all the time, Sa, Sha, Sha, which are the 3 S's in Bengali. Forbear, forbear, forbear. And Mother too repeatedly talked about the importance of developing this forbearance, which is part of fortitude. Because any idiot can react and get mad and just react. I know we do it all the time. It's so easy for me to get frustrated with techie things and just like, and then want to throw something across the room. But that's bad because you lose your inner poise, you lose your self-control, and then I am all too likely to do it again the next time something techie happens to me and I can't deal with it, rather than just keeping my balance, keeping my self-control, and saying, okay, there must be some explanation which I'm too old to figure out. Maybe I can find a 12-year-old who will help me with this. But the truth is, the weaker we are inside, the more we react outside. The stronger we are inside, the less we are reacting on the outside. If we can't forbear, it means because we have this inner weakness and we're too self-absorbed. That's what this lack of forbearance is. Forbearance is called titiksha in Sanskrit. It's considered both in the Vedanta and the yoga philosophies one of the real treasures of spiritual attainment. It's also not only a treasure of having attained spirituality, but also the way to attain spiritual illumination. And Mother was, again, is very important to. Now, Mother didn't speak a word of Sanskrit. She had no, but she would use in her very, very sweet Bengali that sojokora, bear it patiently. Be like the Mother Earth who bears it patiently. Because the truth is, if we don't sort of develop this forbearance, we get easily angry, annoyed, we get knocked off our balance, and then we lose our independence. We lose our own freedom because it means that something or someone else outside of ourselves has taken over my mind, and I lose my own freedom. I lose my independence. So forbearance increases our inner strength and gives us, so we don't lose our moorings next time something external or internal happens to us. So Mother emphasized the necessity and importance of work, and she also emphasized the necessity of meditation and japa. Mother said, you have to meditate every day. She said, constant meditation will make the mind one-pointed. And with a one-pointed mind, we can do anything. Sometimes we think, I really need to be in the right mood to meditate, or, I'm too stressed right now, or I'm too busy right now, or I'm too preoccupied to meditate, but so I need to be in the right mood. But that's like waiting for the waves to stop on the beach. It will never happen, because the more we don't do it, the harder it is to do it. Mother said it was really important to have regularity and consistency in our meditation. It's really important. She said it's necessary to practice japa. She said japa, meditation, and prayer. She said we have to practice this at least every day in the morning and at night, very consistently. She said it's like the rudder of a boat. She said that's what keeps our individual boat from going astray. It keeps us from getting pulled out of the current, this spiritual practice every day. And if we think our mind is too restless to meditate, try it without meditation. It gets much worse. So spend the time, do the effort. And she said, japa removes the impurities of the mind. It's like, well, what's that? It's like, what are the impurities? Well, lust, anger, hatred, greed. What else do we have in our pantheon of mental? Selfishness, desire, egotism, all these things that cloud who we really are. So we don't see our divinity. We don't see the divinity in other people either. So basically, the more impurities we have in our mind, the more unhappy we are. So it behooves us to try to do this because it basically will make us happy. Once a woman came in, one of her companions, and found this tiny little seed. She said, Mother, look what a tiny seed this is. This is from the banyan tree. Such a tiny seed grows up to be such a big tree. It's like one of the biggest trees there is. And Holy Mother responded, see what a tiny seed the name of God is. But from that tiny seed of the name of God comes all spiritual glory. She said, comes spiritual consciousness, devotion, love. And God realization comes from that little tiny seed of God's name. Once she got a letter from a disciple, and he complained that he wasn't able to calm his mind and he wasn't able to concentrate. And Mother at that point became kind of annoyed, and she said, it can be done. She said, if a person repeats their mantra 15,000 or 20,000 times a day, their mind will become calm. She said, I've actually seen it happen. She said, let him do that thing. Let him do that first, and then talk about it. She said, if it doesn't work, then he can talk to me about it. But she said, one has to work at it. One has to put one's mind to it. She said, but instead they complain and say, why doesn't anything happen? I practice my spirituality, but nothing happens. I said, we all know what that's like. We say, I'm not getting anywhere in my spiritual life. I don't feel like I'm making any progress. And then we have to ask ourselves, are we working at it consistently? Are we really putting in our time and our effort into our spiritual life for a really sustained long period of time? Oh, right. Okay. Thanks. So if we want to dig a well, we have to dig it in the same place, not move around, not decide one day, oh, I'll do something else. We work at it every day, same place, get out the spade and dig every single day. That's if we want to reach water, unless we want to just, frustrate ourselves and go around here and there. Because without exception, this firm habit becomes part of our spiritual life, and that really sustains us. Mother really put great emphasis on the importance of developing the habit of thinking of God constantly, just like Brother Lawrence with the practice of the presence of God. She kept saying how important it was to form a habit of constantly thinking of God, because mental habits are very powerful. We have mental habits. We all get up. It's like, okay, I have to have my coffee because I woke up. Okay, that's or we get into habit. I hear a politician's name and I'm going, it's like, that's a negative mental habit. It doesn't do anybody good. It's good to develop these really positive habits. It's like, it's morning, I must meditate. It's evening, I must meditate. All throughout the day, having japa, the habit of just doing japa at all times, thinking of the Lord, bringing the Lord into our presence all the time, thinking of what holy reading and reminding ourselves of what we've read, having discussions about it. Holy Mother lived in this exalted state of spiritual consciousness all the time, but she was level-headed, she was practical, and she was infinitely adaptable. Holy Mother constantly talked about adjusted time, place, circumstance. Everything should be adjusted. We all have principles you have to stick to. These principles are unerring. But within those principles, you adjust to time, place, and circumstance, which she used a little Bengali rhyming scheme, which is so sweet. It's a chakon jemon, tokon temon, chekane jemon, shekane temon, jar sange jemon, tar sange temon. She's like, when such, literally, it's like, when such, then such. Where such, there such. The way you deal with that person is the way you deal with this person. In other words, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Don't be, because she had with her, like her various people were so orthodox and so unbending that their lives were misery, and they made everyone else's lives misery too. You just have to adjust to time, place, and circumstance. So the principles, we stay absolutely firm, and the rest we have to adjust according to time, place, and circumstance. Not because of our convenience, but because the time, the place, and the circumstance have become such that they need adjusting. Once she was traveling with some monks and her companions and a bunch of people. She was going from Kolkata to Jarambati, and they were traveling by bullock cart. And en route, they had stopped to eat, and the cook was making the rice, and it was in an earthen pot, and the pot broke. I don't know whether he dropped it or something happened, but the pot broke. And so they said, okay, we have to find another pot, and we have to, start the rice all over again. And she was saying, no, it's not possible. She said they were 14 miles from where they needed to be. They're traveling by bullock cart, and it's an unsafe area. So she very carefully from the top first of all, she got a leaf, a big saw leaf. Then she scraped from the top and put that in the center of it, the rice at the center of it. And then she got the few vegetables that had cooked just fine. And she opened her picture of Sri Ramakrishna, because she always carried his picture with her. And she opened up the picture and she said, Thakur, you have arranged for the food in this way today. Please eat it quickly while it's warm. It's like adjusted to time, place, and circumstance. This is what she said. We don't. And so the monks began to laugh. It's like, and she said, "Look, Dekho." She said one should act and adjust according to the time. Now, all of you sit down and let me serve you the food. It's like just very practical about everything. She was so wise and so practical, and that's why her advice was always sought. In fact, Swami Sardananda, Ramakrishna's great disciple, and who was a Holy Mother's, after Swami Yogananda and Swami Ramakrishnanda went to Madras, he became her gatekeeper. He stayed at Udbodhan and looked after everything with the family matters and all this and all of her living arrangements. And she said, only Sart can bear my burden. No one realizes how much he has to bear. But he lived very closely with Holy Mother. And of course, he was one of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. And it was Swami Sardananda who had heard from Holy Mother herself that Sri Ramakrishna himself, from their very early days, would go to Holy Mother and consult with her on different issues that had come up and different questions that had come up, and he would consult her about various matters. And she said that when he would ask her things, she would say, I have nothing to say at this moment, but let me think about it and I will tell you my answer later. And he'd say, you have no one else to talk to, tell me now. And she'd say, no, I will think about it more clearly, and then I will let you know my answer later. And he said that she would then go to the Nahabat and pray and cry piteously to Mother Kali. Oh, Mother Kali, Mother, tell me what I should say to him. And then she said, after this heartfelt prayer, she said invariably she would get a response and she would understand then the matter very clearly. And then she would communicate her response to Sri Ramakrishna, because she always had that deep spiritual understanding. And because she was of her wisdom, and because she was the wife of Sri Ramakrishna, and because she was the Divine Mother herself, after Sri Ramakrishna's passing, all the disciples of Holy Mother always consulted her on important matters. She became sort of like the final say. In 1898, when Kolkata was struck by the plague, it was a desperate situation, and the Ramakrishna order was just newly formed, and it was extraordinarily poor. But people were suffering so much, and Nivedita was out there on the streets serving the people, and Swami Vivekananda said, okay, we're going to have to deal with this. I'm going to sell Bellarmont, get the money, and we're going to start relief camps everywhere. And Holy Mother got wind of it. And then she called him and said, my child, how can you sell Bellarmont? You have founded the mott in my name, consecrating it in my name, and dedicating it to Sri Ramakrishna. Where is your right to sell it? And she said, will Bellarmont vanish after just one work of service? She said, no, it has so much more work to do. The infinite spirit of Sri Ramakrishna will spread across the world. This will continue for ages. And that was that. Of course, he fell at her feet. That was that. On another occasion, a servant at Bellarmont, this was again at the early days where things were desperately poor, was found. Swami Vivekananda discovered the servant had been stealing things, so he threw him out. And the servant went to Holy Mother and explained to her his own desperate condition. And then she said, you tell Narayan that I've said that you can come back and never do it again. So it's like, okay, her word was law. And once Swami Shivananda told a monk to leave because he was quarrelsome and irritable, and everybody he had just go, you're not fit to be a monk. And of course, he went to Holy Mother and begged her forgiveness and said, this is what has happened, please intervene for me. And she did, and went to Tarak Maharaj, and she said, let him come back. And Swami Shivananda told the monk, he said, oh, you've gone to the Supreme Court. Blessed you are. You have gone to the Supreme Court and got the final judgment. And it wasn't that she didn't see her faults. She was very aware of their faults. She knew their past, present, and future. But she knew beyond a doubt who they really were, and she could read their intentions. Holy Mother was completely uneducated, but she was Saraswati, the goddess of wisdom. Sri Ramakrishna said, she is Sarada, Saraswati. She is born to bestow knowledge on others. And in her simple, sweet way, she answered questions that confounded philosophers for since time immemorial. And one disciple asked her an age-old question. He said, If there is a God, why is there so much misery in this world? Does he not see? Does he not care? Or doesn't he have the power to remove these evils? And this question has bedeviled people since the dawn of time. Why does God permit evil? Doesn't he care about us? Why is there such suffering? Why? And Mother said, she said, no one can suffer all the time. It's just when we suffer, we think it's like, I'm suffering all the time. She said, no one can suffer all the time. She said, no one will spend all their days on this earth in suffering. She said, but every action brings its own result. And according to that, one gets opportunities. In other words, so disciple then said, you mean everything is the fruit of our karma? This karma followed the result of our own actions? Mother said, what else? What else if not karma? It's like, of course. Everyone, she said, gets the results of the actions they earned in this life. She said a pin must at least prick where a wound from a sword was their due. In other words, this Pravrajika Karma, this action that we've done, action or thoughts in previous births or in this birth, that we must reap the results from. That Pravrajika Karma. That is coming our way. But, especially as devotees, what should have been like a sword cutting off our arm will instead be a pinprick. And that is where grace comes in. That's all about the grace. So our Pravrajika Karma determines that this karma is due to us from our own thoughts and actions. God isn't like pulling strings to test us or to see how miserable we can be. It's the results of our own thoughts and actions. It's of our own making. But as devotees, we have that grace. And this is where this very important grace comes in. Mother said, one suffers so much from the results of one's own thoughts and actions from previous births. She said, so instead of blaming others, which is what we do, one should instead pray to the Lord and depend entirely on his grace. She said, try to bear the suffering patiently and with forbearance under all circumstances. And this is why Mother said very significantly, these are kind of things we forget about Holy Mother, but they're really important. She said, a person must live very carefully. Every action brings its own results. In other words, every action brings karma. Every action, every thought brings karma. She said, it isn't good to use harsh words towards others or to be responsible for their suffering. She said, the purpose of life is fulfilled only when we're able to give joy to one another. It's like, what a wonderful idea. So before we lash out at another person, which is so easy, either because we're in a bad mood, or we decide to take someone down a notch, or just because we can, or just to be mean, we just have to stop before it snowballs. Because we've already created a bad samskara in our mind by even thinking that. But if we follow through with the action, it becomes much worse. So the bad samskara becomes then a real karma, which an action in the world, someone suffers as a result of it. That suffering, they'll not only pay the price, we pay the price for it, and we have to deal with it. And we won't be able to say, why is God treating me like that? It's like, sorry. We won't be able to say, why, God, why did you do that to me? That's why Holy Mother often said, a person must live very carefully in the world. Swami Arupananda Rashbihari Maharaj once said to her, Mother, I am afraid. She said, good. It is good you are afraid. It's like, we hear Swamiji, it's like, be fearless. It's like, she said, good. Good you are afraid. A person must live very carefully in this world. Be very careful. That's why she said, do not use harsh words towards others or be in any way responsible for their suffering. Because they suffer, we suffer, that's a lose-lose. So we have to kind of stop it before it happens, before it snowballs. Then it's like, if we feel it coming on, it's like, okay, I'm going to have to address it, but I'm going to do it when I have more control over myself, so we can, because things do have to be dealt with. They can't just be ignored, and we can't just allow ourselves to be stepped on. But we always have to address the person with respect, with the dignity that if even a broom deserves respect, so does another human being. A few weeks ago, I gave a Zoom talk to a group in the East Coast, very close to my heart. And after the talk, there was a question and answer session. And a woman asked a really great question that I'd like to share with you. She said, why doesn't the avatar come as a woman? Because we always talk about the avatar. There's Rama, and then there was Krishna, and then there was Buddha, and Jesus, and Chaitanya Deva, and Sri Ramakrishna. And they're all men. And so she said, well, why are there any women avatars? And as I said, because the avatar comes with his divine consort. Because every Shiva has a Shakti. Every incarnation has the divine feminine that comes with him. With Rama came Sita. With Krishna came Radha. With Buddha came Yashodhara. With Jesus came Mary. With Sri Ramakrishna came Sarada Devi. We can't separate them out. They're not like two individual beings. They're only one being. As we often hear in this literature and in the Ramakrishna order, there are two sides of the same coin, two faces on that same coin. You can't take the head and the tail and pull it apart. Both beings are there. Both beings. So when the avatar comes, the avatar brings his power for the sake of the world. As Sri Ramakrishna said, you can't separate fire from its power to burn. Shiva and Shakti always come together. So when Sri Ramakrishna came, he brought Holy Mother Sarada Devi with him for the good of the world. And she hid herself, living like this simple village woman, just keeping herself busy with everyday household affairs, which is there to let us know this is how we attain God. And she went way out of her way to disguise her own divine nature. Once she and her young nephew were they were walking from one small village to the next. And then suddenly on the way back, he just refused to budge and said, Aunt, tell me who you are. I said, what do you mean? He said, no, I'm not going to move until you tell me who you are. And she said, what is this? What is this, my child? You know who I am. I'm your aunt. And he said, no, tell me who you really are. Are you really Kali? And she said, no, I'm your aunt. But he wouldn't budge. He said, no. I've heard you are Kali. Are you really Kali? And she said, people say that I am Kali. And the nephew wouldn't let it go. He said, tell me again. Kali, is it so? And she said, yes. She was asked by a disciple once why she hid her divinity. And she said, because excessive manifestation of divinity creates fear in the minds of the devotees. They cannot feel intimate. Holy Mother wanted us to feel like we can go to her like we can go to nobody else. That we'll be able to tell her everything, be with her at all times, and she'll be there for us at all times. If you have a deity like Kali or Saraswati or Jagadhatri, how can we feel we'll be in awe? We'll be in awe. So she lived hiding herself like a simple village woman doing ordinary things, but her light could not be hid under a bushel. Now she's known and worshipped by millions and millions of people around the world. And she's giving them solace. A college student used to visit Holy Mother. She was his guru. One day he came to her and suddenly he said, Mother, I'm no good for this place. I'm unfit to come to you. I'm saying goodbye forever. And he ran out the door. This is Calcutta. He runs out the door. She runs after him. Now, mind you, she was always kept veiled. Swami Sardananda never saw her face. As long as he never once saw her face. He said, she treats me like I'm her father-in-law. He said, never saw. She ran after him. And she grabbed him by both shoulders, pulled him towards her, looked him straight in the eye and said, whenever any disturbing thought comes to you, think of me. You can imagine what he was thinking. Whenever any disturbing thought comes to you, think of me. Have no fear. And it transformed his life. He said, all of my days, I see those compassionate eyes looking at me and saying, think of me. Think of me. You know what? The same miracle can happen to us too if we want it. If we want that same miracle can happen to us and we can be transformed too. Because the more we think of Mother, the more we inhabit her qualities. And the more we inhabit her qualities, the more we gain her sort of peace and her strength and her fortitude and her forbearance. The more we inhabit her qualities, the more we can withstand the storms that life just throws at us unexpectedly. Who expected COVID? Who expected this? Who expected things to go crazy right now? But it allows us to withstand all the storms that life brings us. So no matter what we've done, said, or thought, anytime, in this life or in previous lives, we know there is one place that we can always go to, one place we can always turn to, one place of refuge that is always our own, and that is at the feet of Holy Mother. Christopher Isherwood was one of our great writers, one of our great devotees. And he said that as Mother grew older, she seemed to inhabit a world consisting entirely of her own children. And he said that she was unable to see faults in any of them. And she actually actively prayed for that, to not see others' faults. And that was her final message. And of course, it's easy. It's so easy to see faults because they're so apparent. They're right in front of our face. And of course, it's so much easier to see them than our own because we don't have any. But she said that to see others' faults only injures us. She said, if we think of others' faults, we're contaminated by them. She said we ourselves develop the same faults that we see in others, which shows us how psychologically astute she was. Because first of all, unless we have it ourselves, we're not going to see it in anybody else. If we don't know Romanian, we won't be able to speak Romanian to anybody else. If we see something, we won't identify it. But if we have it in ourselves, we can identify it in others. And the more we think about those things in someone else, the more we deepen that samskara in our own mind, it becomes deeper. And we're the ones who are going to do the very same thing as much as the other person. And that'll create a deeper samskara, and it's bad karma. So Sri Krishna also didn't like this kind of fault finding, this picky. He called him a dosha drishti. A dosha is like a flaw. It's like a peck on a mango, or like a spot on a cloth, or some impurity that we have on ourselves, bird poop or something. It's a dosha. It's an impurity. It's a flaw. But to be for him a dosha drishti, a seer, was to just show how petty your mind was, rather than, seeing the divinity everywhere. She said Mother's final message to the world was, my child, if you wish to find happiness, don't see others' faults, rather see your own. No one is a stranger. The whole world is your own. So we hear the highest truths of Vedanta taught in the sweetest, simplest, easiest words that even a child can understand. This oneness of existence that we teach in Vedanta is nothing but no one is a stranger. No one is a stranger. There's no, every being, that divinity is everywhere. No one is separate from us. Holy Mother saw every being literally as her own child. I kept thinking, what if we even tried to do that? What if we even made a feeble attempt to even see other people, other beings as our own children? Wouldn't that make our lives so much sweeter? If we could just sort of like have that maternal attitude and kind of take everyone under our wings. It's instead of the other possibilities. Wouldn't our life be blessed, and wouldn't it be a blessing for everybody else if we could kind of develop that sort of inherent tenderness that goes along with seeing others as our child, as our children. Everybody is our children. And I'll conclude with a short, pithy phrase of Swami Asheshananda, because he was sort of the king of short, pithy phrases. But this he knew from his own experience. He said, Sri Ramakrishna is the method. Holy Mother is the grace. Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadguru Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu Pranamami Muhurmuhu Pranamami Muhurmuhu. O Mother Sarda Devi and Sri Ramakrishna, the Universal Teacher, taking shelter at your feet, I salute you again and again. Thank you. And if anyone has any questions, I double dog dare you to ask them.
Hi, Mataji.
Hi. I don't see you, but I hear your voice.
It's Soma here from the UK.
Oh, hi.
Hi. Thank you. I was wondering whether you might not have this on the tip of your tongue, but you were saying how Holy Mother used to often say, it's all in the mind. Do any of her actual words about this come to mind? Can you think of
Not to my mind. They are in now the Bengali translation is eluding me. The Shishimaya Katha. It's in the Maya Katha. And if you can, it's in there. The words actually don't come to my mind. But she said the mind is everything. But I think, whatever our language may be, whatever language we have inside our head, I kind of go between, if I often hear little Bengali phrases or Sanskrit phrases or French phrases or whatever, and they kind of stick in my head because they have some sort of mnemic quality. Whatever that, keep it in our mind. Keep it in our mind because it's very helpful. That's why both Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother tended to use them because they were so much easier to remember that way. But it's like the mind is everything. How is the UK right now?
Well, I'm on the border of
You're at Wales, right? Yeah.
And it's snowing here. It's snowing in a lot of the UK. And everything is wonderful in mindful part of the world. There's a lot of suffering. There's a lot of anxiety. People are starting to get through the vaccinations.
Good.
So they have started. And we'll just see how it all plays out, I guess.
Well, be strong. Be strong. Be strong. Mother protects. Mother protects. Mother protects. Any other questions or issues? Quarrels? Sarah, I was quoting your guru a lot. Devi Prana was quoting your guru a lot.
Yes, I loved it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Such a memorable human being.
Yes,
Yeah.
we were very blessed to know him. I met him when I was 17.
Wow.
Yeah. So thank you very much. Beautiful talk.
It was, we're so fortunate. We're so close to the source. We have been in the company of disciples, of direct disciples, and people who have learned from disciples of Holy Mother, and they tell us what it was like to be with Holy Mother, tell us what it's like to be with Sri Ramakrishna, with direct disciples, and repeat their words to us. And we get that power directly from the source. I mean, we should every day be really aware of the grace that we've been given. That we're here by grace, grace, grace. That no matter what else has happened to us in our lives, it's like, you've pulled me out from this morass of the world, and for some unknown reason, at least unknown to me, you've given me all these blessings that life can be so sweet, because I have a mother. She said, I'm the mother of the virtuous, I'm the mother of the wicked. In times of distress, always say to yourself, I have a mother. It's like we can be any sort of human being. You don't want to be wicked because it makes you suffer. It's going to make somebody else suffer. But whenever we feel like we're so tempted to condemn ourselves, it's like, Mother's got my back. Please, Mother, turn my mind around so I'll never do that again. We're so fortunate.
Vrajaprana, don't you think it's very inspiring that, people like Swami Seshananda, who in the beginning couldn't recognize who Holy Mother was, and yet as time went on, he knew she was the Divine Mother. Swami Ranganathananda, all of his doubts, or Swami, writing Swami Triyananda, whatever. I mean, it's very inspiring.
Yes.
As much as we may at times put ourselves down or not feel like we're doing enough, we're trying.
That's so true. It's like Swami Prabhavananda used to go to Holy Mother because she would stop in Vishnupur where he lived as a growing up. And she would say to him, don't I know you, Baba? And no, I've never seen. And he would put her head down on her feet, but he would get this little electric tingle when he put his head on her feet. And that's the only reason he went to her, because he liked that electric tingle. And he didn't realize until decades later that, or 1 or 2 decades later, that she started dating not only the wife of Ramakrishna, the consort, but the Divine Mother herself. And at the end of his life, when he would eat, there's a picture of Holy Mother here and a picture of Maharaj here, and he would eat and just look at each one, just sort of commune with each one. And you just the knowledge that how available they are to us. Holy Mother herself, another thing she said that's so important. People say, I can't meditate. She said, just look at Ramakrishna's photo. That will be it. That will be enough. Just look at his photo. Look at his photo. Just like sometimes our mind are so wild and frenzied, we can't. It's like, Rah! Look at the photo. That in itself, or look at Mother's. At one point, she was giving instruction to a disciple, and she said, "Think of me." And then she said, "Think of Thakur." And I think it was Yogin Ma who was there at the time. She told the disciple, "Did you hear that? Did you hear that? You mother, you can't take your words back into your mouth. That's what you said." So we can think of Holy Mother, look at Holy Mother's photo, think of Sri Ramakrishna, look at his photo, and get like that, yes, get that peace kind of washed over us, that tranquility that comes just by looking at the photo. And yes, we might spend our whole lives not realizing what she is, but even at the last breath, she will come to us. They will come to us. Sri Ramakrishna will come to us. We have that promise. We have that promise. They will be there for us. It's like, no matter what, if I get hit in the head with a block of concrete that I probably threw myself, they will be with me there at the last minute. We are given that. Okay, any other? Okay. All right, then everyone have a good, warm. We have Swamiji's puja is coming up on Thursday. We will start streaming the puja, God willing, at 10:45, and hope you can join us then. Okay. Oh, sorry, important. And there's also the breakfast at 7 a.m, a reading of the Katha Upanishad and serving Swamiji his breakfast. So that is 7 a.m. California time. So please join us for our reading of the Katha Upanishad, which Swamiji loved, along with his breakfast. Okay.